The fabric of New Zealand society is changing, as it always has, and there will be consequences. But as tensions around how we approach the future inevitably arise, the bigger political question we're now facing is, what kind of attitude are we going to bring to that? Hope or fear? Because how we respond to the challenge will depend on how it's framed.
Western societies, who have over the last 20 years seen a very substantial decline in birth rates, will very soon all be competing for migrants because they'll need the workers and they'll need the taxpayers to pay for the benefits that the elderly will need. So we're in this transition period when people are nervous about immigrants. They think they're taking jobs, putting pressure on infrastructure. But really, we should be very welcoming to immigrants because they are our future in terms of this country and many other countries.
We should look at the number of people granted permanent resident visas. And here's what that looks like over the last 10 years. Pretty much 45,000 people coming to live in New Zealand every single year. That's roughly 1% of the population. How did we arrive at the 1% target?
It's something that we share with Australia and Canada. It's 1% of population.
And is there some rationale for that, or is it just, well, they're doing it, so it seems like a good idea?
It's a good idea. They've done it, and I think we should do it.
But why do we need this 1% at all?
Essentially, we're ageing with nobody to help provide labour in the society. It's a question that I always ask, who's going to wipe your chin? So one of the things that's going to happen over the next decade is the numbers over the age of 65 are going to double, and we've got things like a dependency ratio. Now, when I was growing up in 20th century New Zealand, the dependency ratio was 4 people in paid work to 1 dependent. Currently, we're heading towards a 2-to-1 ratio.
2 to 1?
Yes. So we've got to balance that out. And the way that we're doing that is by encouraging immigrants who are going to contribute economically to the country.
If we want to keep getting superannuation in the future, some experts think part of the solution means letting even more tax-paying immigrants into the country. But will they be contributing enough?
Okay, so I want to start with this New Zealand Institute of Economic Research's suggestion that New Zealand should have a population of 15 million by 2061, because this is the argument that people keep coming back to me with. Okay, so if we were to assume that the birth rate, 2.1 births per woman, is what you need to replace the population, if that remained constant, we push life expectancy at birth up to 95 years, and that's Stats New Zealand's highest assumption, and we give it for both males and females. We increase annual net migration to 100,000 a year. Normally it's around about, well, the medium variant is about 12,000 a year. If we keep the age structure of migrants very youthful, notwithstanding what I just said about the fact that we'll be competing on a diminishing pool, and migration positive at all ages, so that instead of what we usually do is we lose young people and we gain people at ever so slightly older, like middle ages. We keep it positive at all ages. Our 2061 population would be 10.8 million, and 22% would be over the age of 65. So it's really bigger population, not much difference in terms of the actual ageing. And if you happen to read the NZIER report, they point out right through it the impossibility of achieving the possible target population of 15 million. So it's really important that you understand those things, because the debate, and I keep getting calls from the media about it, it's not about whether it's achievable, it's about where should they live, you know? What will they be like? Who will they be? And, you know, how are we going to manage this big population? And it's impossible. So it's much more important that we engage with the realities that we're dealing with, and that is the fact that there will be growth, but most of that growth will be at the older ages. If we wanted to get that 15 million population by 2061, and I tried various runs on with my software, we'd want 150,000 net migrants a year. We'd have to keep the fertility rate at 2.1. New Zealand, as I'll say again in a minute, already has the highest birth rate in the developed world, so we would really be pushing it. Or we need the birth rate to get back up to baby boom levels, about 3.5 births per woman, and keep it, you know, a more achievable 100,000 migrants a year. So you see the difficulty. It's really not possible. And it's not possible because of these inconvenient truths about population ageing. So, see that? Actually highest birth rate in the developed world. Our global growth rate, as you saw, is looking pretty good. We've got lots and lots of young Kiwis. They seem to be popping up everywhere. And in fact, be careful if you want to close any of your schools or have them closed on you. There's been a wee baby blip born since about 2002. It peaked in around 2008. And that little wave, I promise you, will actually get to intermediate school, you know, in about 5 years' time. They're just going through primary school now. They're very, very important. I actually have called them GNT, GYH. Thank God you're here, because they will arrive at the door of the labour market exactly at the time that the biggest cohorts from the baby boom, born around 1960, reach the age at which they start to retire. So that little baby blip is so precious, and we absolutely must school it perfectly and encourage it to stay here and let it know how, you know, how much we need it and value it and so on. And we shouldn't close schools on them at the same time as having to have an eye on the fact that we do have, you know, diminishing numbers coming behind them. So it's like, follow the demography. And, you know, I just don't know whether Hekia Parata actually does use it. You would think they do. You know, they've got entire armies of advisors at their beck and call. But according to some people who I know very well who know what goes on in there, no, they don't. So it is a bit of a worry. Okay, so I've already said we are a very young country globally. We had the longest baby boom in the world, in the developed world, and the highest peak birth rate, and that is why we are one of the youngest developed countries today. But you can see how much we've changed since 1961. So there's me, and a few of you, I can see you in there, and you can see by how much the population has aged, and these changes are just unfolding, you know, unless you put them into graphs you can't really see them. Whoops, where are we? Okay, now, the important point, I'll just roll these numbers. Oh, something's happened. I made this slide, would you believe, on my little Apple AirBook, and it does not like the other programs, so it's not going to show what should be shown. These are the age groups, 0 to 14, 15 to 24, 25 to 39, I think it is. Anyway, the top one is 65 plus, and this is the working age population. So you can see that it's not really going to grow very much. It grows a bit, as Ross pointed out, but as a proportion of the total population, it declines from about 66% at the moment to 60%. Blow, there was a lot of good stuff on that slide. Okay, then across the country, as you would be well aware, ageing differs by region. And this is something that is not really talked about a lot. You might talk about it among yourselves, but the discussion about population ageing is all about national level stuff. And we have to realise that national level usually means Auckland. Auckland is very young, so Auckland is growing. Auckland gets the greatest share of the growth and so on. You see.